The room fell dead silent as Captain Diana Rodriguez stared at the massive tactical display, numbers racing through her mind at lightning speed. Around her, 23 seasoned military officers watched in stunned disbelief. Just minutes earlier, they had been snickering behind their hands, whispering about the math nerd who somehow made it through selection. Now, as the coordinates she calculated appeared on their screens, showing a precision strike path that seemed impossible, nobody was laughing anymore. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Diana Rodriguez had always been different. While other kids in her small Arizona hometown spent summers at the community pool, she was hunched over calculus textbooks borrowed from the local college library. Her parents, both high school teachers, had long since stopped trying to understand their daughter's obsession with numbers. They just smiled and nodded when she rattled off complex equations at the dinner table, the same way they might humor a child's imaginary friend. By 17, Diana had already completed most of her mathematics degree through online courses. Her professors at Arizona State University had never met her in person, but they knew her work. Dr. Margaret Chen, head of the mathematics department, would later describe Diana's thesis on predictive trajectory modeling as the most sophisticated undergraduate work I've encountered in 30 years of teaching. But academic brilliance didn't translate to social acceptance. Diana's classmates saw her as the weird girl who carried graph paper in her backpack and could solve differential equations faster than most people could balance their checkbooks. She ate lunch alone, worked on group projects by herself, and graduated valedictorian to an audience that barely knew her name. The military recruitment fair came to campus during Diana's senior year. She wandered past the booths out of curiosity, stopping when she saw a display about missile defense systems. The recruiting officer, Sergeant Mike Thompson, was in the middle of his practiced pitch about serving your country and learning valuable skills. Diana interrupted him mid-sentence. "Your trajectory calculations are wrong," she said quietly, pointing to a poster showing a missile intercept diagram. "You're not accounting for atmospheric density variations at altitude. The intercept point would be off by at least 40 meters." Sergeant Thompson blinked. In 15 years of recruitment, no one had ever critiqued his display materials. He looked at the petite young woman with thick-rimmed glasses and wondered if this was some kind of joke. "Are you studying engineering?" he asked. "Mathematics, but I've been working on ballistic modeling as a hobby." Diana pulled out a worn notebook and began sketching corrections to the diagram. Her pen moved across the page in fluid motions, equations appearing faster than most people could write their own names. 20 minutes later, Sergeant Thompson was on the phone with his commanding officer. By the end of the week, Diana had received an invitation to apply for the Advanced Tactical Computing Program, one of the military's most selective and secretive training initiatives. The program was housed at Fort Carson in Colorado, nestled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. Diana arrived on a crisp October morning, carrying a single duffel bag and a laptop computer that had seen better days. The other candidates were already there, 23 officers from various branches of the military. They looked like they'd stepped out of a recruiting poster, broad shoulders, confident grins, and enough medals between them to stock a trophy shop. Major Robert Hayes, the program director, addressed the group in a conference room that smelled of coffee and industrial carpet. He was a compact man with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail they encountered. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are here because each of you has demonstrated exceptional tactical thinking in your respective fields. Over the next 8 weeks, we will test those skills in ways you cannot imagine. Our goal is simple: to develop the next generation of strategic targeting specialists. The margin for error in modern warfare is measured in centimeters and milliseconds. We need people who can calculate those margins faster and more accurately than any computer system currently in existence." Diana glanced around the room. Every other face reflected years of combat experience, leadership training, and military bearing. She felt like an imposter, wearing her ill-fitting uniform, her name tape crooked because she still couldn't figure out how to iron it properly. The whispers started on day 3. Diana had struggled through the physical training components, finishing last in every running exercise and barely managing the minimum requirements for the obstacle course. But when they moved to the classroom portions, something shifted. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez was explaining ballistic coefficients when Diana raised her hand. "Ma'am, the formula on the board assumes a standard atmospheric model, but real-world conditions would require dynamic adjustments for pressure gradients, especially at extended ranges." Colonel Martinez paused. She had been teaching military mathematics for 12 years and had never had a student question her fundamental equations. "Can you elaborate, Rodriguez?" Diana stood and walked to the whiteboard, ignoring the eye rolls from several classmates. Her marker began moving across the surface, building an expanded equation that accounted for variables most of the class had never heard of. Wind shear coefficients, temperature inversions, humidity effects on air density. Each factor carefully integrated into a mathematical framework that transformed the simple textbook formula into something approaching real-world accuracy. The room was quiet. Colonel Martinez stared at the board, checking Diana's work line by line. Finally, she nodded. That's actually correct. Where did you learn to calculate atmospheric compensation factors?" "I worked them out myself, ma'am. Started with meteorological data from the National Weather Service and cross-referenced with ballistic test results I found in declassified military studies." From the back row, Captain David Kumar whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. "Great, we've got a textbook genius who probably can't tie her own boots." A few people chuckled. Diana's face flushed red, but she returned to her seat without comment. The mockery intensified as the days passed. When Diana struggled to disassemble a rifle in the required time, someone suggested she calculate the spring tension instead of actually learning to use the weapon. When she got lost during a navigation exercise, Captain Kumar loudly wondered if she needed to derive the mathematical formula for using a compass. The worst incident came during week 5. The class was working on a simulated targeting exercise using scaled-down versions of actual missile guidance systems. Each team of 3 was given coordinates for a moving target and asked to calculate intercept solutions under time pressure. Diana's teammates were Lieutenant Jake Morrison, an artillery specialist from Fort Hood, and Captain Angela Torres, a Navy weapons officer with 6 years of combat experience. They were assigned a scenario involving a hostile aircraft moving at variable speeds through mountainous terrain. Morrison took charge immediately. "Okay, I'll handle the initial calculations, Torres can work on the trajectory modeling, and Rodriguez, maybe you can double-check our arithmetic or something." Diana bit her tongue and watched as her teammates attacked the problem using standard military procedures. Their approach was methodical but inflexible, relying on pre-programmed solutions that assumed ideal conditions. After 30 minutes, they submitted a targeting solution that would have resulted in a miss by nearly 200 meters. Major Hayes reviewed the results in front of the entire class. Team after team had produced similar outcomes. Competent but imprecise calculations that might work against stationary targets but would fail against the dynamic scenarios they were likely to encounter in actual combat. "Rodriguez's team," Major Hayes announced, "your solution shows a miss distance of 187 meters. Can anyone explain why your accuracy was so poor?" Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Torres stared at her hands. Diana slowly raised her hand. "Sir, we used the standard targeting algorithms, but they don't account for the specific atmospheric conditions in the scenario. The target was flying through a mountain valley where air density would be significantly different from sea level calculations. Also, the variable speed changes weren't properly integrated into the prediction model." "And what would you have done differently?" Diana walked to the front of the room and began writing on the whiteboard again. This time, her equations were more complex, incorporating real-time environmental data and predictive algorithms that could adjust for changing target behavior. The math filled 3 entire boards, dense clusters of symbols that told a story of precision most of the class couldn't follow. Using this approach, Diana said, the intercept solution would be accurate to within 15 meters, even accounting for target evasion maneuvers. Major Hayes studied the calculations for a long moment. Then he turned to face the class with an expression that mixed surprise with something approaching awe. Rodriguez, your solution is mathematically sound, but in a real combat situation, you'd have approximately 3 minutes to make these calculations. Do you honestly believe you could work through this level of complexity under that kind of time pressure? Diana met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir, I could do it in under 90 seconds. The room erupted in barely suppressed laughter. Captain Kumar shook his head openly. Come on, Rodriguez, this isn't a classroom exam. People's lives depend on getting these calculations right the first time. I understand that, sir. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more interested in showing off your math skills than learning how to function as part of a team. Diana's face burned, but she kept her voice level. I'm interested in accuracy, sir. Mathematical precision saves lives. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Major Hayes held up a hand for silence. We'll see, Rodriguez. Tomorrow's exercise will give you a chance to prove whether your confidence is justified or just academic arrogance. As the class filed out, Diana heard the whispers starting again. Someone muttered about classroom heroes who crumbled under pressure. Another voice suggested that maybe the math genius should stick to teaching instead of trying to play soldier. Diana gathered her notebooks and headed back to her barracks room alone, as usual. Through her window, she could see the lights of Colorado Springs twinkling in the distance, and beyond that, the dark silhouette of the mountains where tomorrow's exercise would take place. She opened her laptop and began reviewing meteorological data for the training area, cross-referencing wind patterns with topographical maps. Her teammates might doubt her abilities, but Diana Rodriguez had never failed a mathematical challenge in her life. Tomorrow, she would show them that precision and speed weren't mutually exclusive. They were the difference between success and catastrophe. Dawn broke over the Colorado training range with a harsh clarity that made every detail of the landscape stand out in sharp relief. Diana had been awake since 4:30, reviewing satellite weather data on her laptop while her roommate, Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the Air Force, slept soundly in the adjacent bunk. The meteorological reports showed conditions that would challenge even the most sophisticated targeting systems. Gusty crosswinds, temperature inversions at multiple altitudes, and a low-pressure system moving in from the west that would create unpredictable air density variations. The training facility's main briefing room buzzed with nervous energy as the 24 candidates filed in for their final assessment. Major Hayes stood behind a podium that supported a large tactical display, its screen showing a three-dimensional map of the mountain range where they would be conducting live-fire exercises with actual missile systems. This wasn't a simulation anymore. Today's exercise will determine who among you has the capability to serve as a strategic targeting specialist in active combat zones, Major Hayes announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You will be working with M142 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, commonly known as HIMARS. Each team will receive real-time intelligence about enemy positions and will have exactly 4 minutes from target identification to missile launch. Your accuracy will be measured against actual GPS coordinates, and there is zero tolerance for error margins exceeding 25 meters. Diana felt her stomach tighten. The HIMARS system was capable of precision strikes at ranges up to 300 kilometers, but it required extraordinarily precise calculations to account for the dozens of variables that could throw a missile off course. Wind speed, atmospheric pressure, temperature gradients, target movement, terrain elevation changes, all of these factors had to be processed and integrated into targeting solutions faster than most people could solve basic algebra problems. Teams will be randomly assigned, Major Hayes continued, pulling names from a tactical helmet. Rodriguez, Morrison, and Williams, you're Team 7. Diana glanced toward Lieutenant Ben Williams, a Marine Corps forward observer from Camp Pendleton. Unlike Morrison, who had openly mocked her mathematical abilities, Williams had maintained professional distance throughout the program. He was known for his steady nerves under pressure and his ability to coordinate complex fire missions in chaotic battlefield conditions. Morrison caught Diana's eye and shook his head slightly, as if to say they were doomed to fail with the math nerd on their team. Several other candidates noticed the gesture and smirked. Captain Kumar, now assigned to Team 3, made an exaggerated show of checking his watch. "Better hope Rodriguez can calculate faster than she runs," he said loudly enough for half the room to hear, "because if she chokes under pressure, Team 7 is going to light up some empty mountainside." The teams were transported to their firing positions in armored vehicles that bounced and jolted over rough mountain roads. Diana stared out the small window, watching the terrain change from relatively flat training areas to steep-sided valleys carved by ancient glaciers. Each geographical feature represented a mathematical variable that would need to be incorporated into their targeting calculations. Team 7's HIMARS launcher sat on a plateau overlooking a vast expanse of wilderness. The vehicle itself was an impressive piece of military engineering, a wheeled platform carrying 6 guided rocket pods, each missile capable of devastating precision when properly directed. The targeting computer occupied most of the vehicle's interior, its multiple screens displaying everything from wind measurements to satellite imagery. Williams immediately began setting up communication equipment to receive target coordinates from the exercise controllers. Morrison started familiarizing himself with the HIMARS firing controls, running through pre-launch checklists with practiced efficiency. Diana positioned herself at the targeting computer and began calibrating the system's environmental sensors. "First target package incoming," Williams announced, pressing his headset closer to his ear. "Grid coordinates November 742, Echo 6689. The enemy command post, estimated 12 personnel, dug in approximately 8 meters below ground level. Time to target engagement, 4 minutes, starting now." Diana's fingers flew across the targeting computer's keyboard, pulling up topographical data for the specified coordinates. The target was located in a narrow valley approximately 47 kilometers northeast of their position, nestled between 2 ridgelines that would create complex wind patterns and atmospheric disturbances. Morrison leaned over her shoulder, watching numbers scroll across the targeting display. Standard calculation shows azimuth 207 degrees, elevation angle 4.3 degrees, time of flight approximately 96 seconds. "Let's go with that." "Wait," Diana said, her eyes scanning meteorological data that the targeting computer was receiving in real time. "The wind measurements are showing severe downdrafts in the target valley. The standard calculation doesn't account for the vertical air movement between those ridgelines." "Rodriguez, we don't have time for your theoretical mathematics," Morrison snapped. "The computer's calculation is good enough." Diana ignored him and continued working, her mind processing atmospheric data faster than the targeting system could display it. She could visualize the missile's flight path through 3-dimensional space, accounting for factors that the standard military algorithms simply weren't sophisticated enough to handle. The temperature differential between the valley floor and the ridgeline peaks is creating a thermal inversion. Air density in the target zone is approximately 15% lower than the computer's assumption. Plus, there's a crosswind component that varies with altitude. It's going to push the missile off course by at least 30 meters. Williams checked his stopwatch. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Morrison reached for the firing controls. "We're going with the computer solution. I'm not risking our evaluation on Rodriguez's guesswork." "It's not guesswork," Diana said firmly. "Give me 30 more seconds to input the corrections." "Negative. We're launching now." Diana's hands moved with desperate speed across the keyboard, overriding Morrison's targeting solution and entering her own calculations. Her modified trajectory accounted for atmospheric density variations, complex wind patterns, and even the slight gravitational anomalies caused by the mountain's geological composition. "Rodriguez, what the hell are you doing?" Morrison shouted. Diana replied without looking up from her screen. "Trust me on this." Williams was monitoring radio chatter from the other team. "Team 3 just launched. Team 5 is launching in 10 seconds. "Time remaining," Morrison demanded. 47 seconds. Diana's final calculations appeared on the targeting display, showing a firing solution that differed significantly from the computer's standard recommendation. The azimuth was shifted by nearly 2 degrees, and the elevation angle had been adjusted to compensate for the atmospheric conditions she had identified. "Launch sequence initiated," Williams announced. The HIMARS system erupted with controlled violence as the guided missile rocketed away from the launcher. Diana watched its telemetry data stream across her monitor, tracking the projectile's flight path through the complex atmospheric conditions over the target valley. Her calculations had predicted the missile would encounter significant wind resistance at the 15-kilometer mark, then benefit from favorable tailwinds as it approached the target coordinates. "Impact in 23 seconds," Williams reported. The radio crackled with reports from the other teams. Team 3 had achieved a hit within 18 meters of their target, respectable accuracy under the challenging conditions. Team 5 had missed by 31 meters, failing the exercise entirely. Team 7, impact, confirmed direct hit. Accuracy 4 meters from designated target coordinates. The silence that followed Williams' announcement was profound. Morrison stared at the targeting display in disbelief. Even Diana felt a moment of shock at how precisely her calculations had guided the missile to its intended destination. Major Hayes's voice came over the radio. "Team 7, confirm your targeting solution. How did you achieve that level of accuracy?" Morrison looked at Diana, his expression mixing grudging respect with lingering skepticism. He keyed the radio microphone. "Sir, Rodriguez made atmospheric corrections to the standard firing solution. She calculated wind and air density variables that our targeting computer couldn't process." Over the course of the next 3 hours, Team 7 received 4 additional target assignments. Each scenario presented different challenges: moving vehicles, elevated positions, targets obscured by terrain features. Diana's mathematical approach proved consistently superior to standard military targeting algorithms. While other teams achieved average accuracy ratings between 20 and 40 meters, Team 7 never missed by more than 6 meters. The final target assignment came as afternoon shadows began lengthening across the mountain range. It was the most challenging scenario yet: a simulated enemy missile launcher positioned on a ridgeline 58 kilometers away, preparing to engage friendly aircraft. The target was mobile, meaning it could change position during the missile's flight time, and it was partially concealed by terrain features that would interfere with standard targeting methods. "This is a time-critical target," the exercise controllers announced. "The enemy launcher is preparing to engage friendly air assets. The engagement window is limited to 3 minutes before the target moves out of range." Williams received the coordinates and began relaying target information. Morrison prepared the HIMARS system for what would be their most difficult shot of the day. Diana studied the tactical display, noting that the target was positioned in an area where 3 separate weather systems converged, creating atmospheric conditions that would challenge even her mathematical abilities. "Target is moving," Williams reported. "Current speed approximately 15 kilometers per hour, heading northeast along the ridgeline." Diana's mind shifted into a state of focused intensity that her college professors would have recognized. She began calculating not just where the target currently was, but where it would be when the missile arrived, accounting for the vehicle's acceleration patterns, terrain limitations, and probable evasion maneuvers. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, building targeting solutions that incorporated predictive algorithms she had developed during her undergraduate research. The equations grew increasingly complex as she factored in atmospheric conditions, target movement patterns, and even the slight delay between missile launch and guidance system activation. 2 minutes remaining, Williams announced. Morrison watched Diana work, no longer attempting to interfere with her calculations. He had seen enough evidence of her abilities to trust her mathematical judgment, even when it contradicted everything he had learned in 15 years of military service. Diana's final targeting solution appeared on the display, showing a firing trajectory that seemed to curve impossibly through 3-dimensional space. Her calculations predicted the missile would follow a path that accounted for changing wind conditions, target movement, and even the rotational effects of the Earth itself over the extended flight time. "Launching now," Morrison announced. The missile streaked away from the HIMARS launcher, following a flight path that looked wrong to everyone except Diana. Her mathematics had predicted a trajectory that seemed to curve too far to the north, compensating for atmospheric conditions that wouldn't become apparent until the missile was already halfway to its target. "Flight time, 2 minutes, 18 seconds, Diana announced, monitoring telemetry data that confirmed her trajectory calculations were performing exactly as predicted. Radio chatter indicated that several other teams had launched missiles at the same target. Team 2 had achieved a near miss at 22 meters. Team 6 had missed entirely when their target movement predictions proved inaccurate. Team 9 was still calculating their firing solution when time expired. "All missiles in flight," the exercise controllers announced. "Stand by for impact assessment." Diana watched her missile's final approach on the tactical display, seeing it adjust course slightly as its guidance system responded to the atmospheric conditions she had predicted. The projectile seemed to bend through space, following the precise mathematical path she had calculated to intercept a target that was no longer where it had been when they first received the coordinates. "Impact confirmed," Williams reported, his voice carrying a note of awe. "Direct hit. Target destroyed." The radio erupted with congratulations and requests for Team 7's targeting methodology. Major Hayes himself came on the frequency to acknowledge their achievement. "Team 7, outstanding performance. Rodriguez reports to the briefing room immediately after exercise conclusion. We need to discuss your targeting techniques." As the teams began returning to base, Diana found herself surrounded by fellow candidates who had spent weeks mocking her mathematical approach. Captain Kumar approached with an expression that mixed embarrassment with genuine curiosity. "Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. I thought your math was just academic showing off, but what you did today, that was combat-level precision under real-world conditions." Morrison extended his hand. "I was wrong about you, Diana. Your calculations saved our evaluation today." Diana accepted the handshake, but her mind was already moving ahead to the implications of what had happened. She had proven that mathematical precision could exceed the capabilities of standard military targeting systems, but she also understood that her methods would only be valuable if they could be taught to others or integrated into existing military procedures. The return journey to Fort Carson gave her time to think about the broader significance of the day's events. She had achieved something that went beyond personal vindication. She had demonstrated that mathematical innovation could enhance military effectiveness in ways that traditional training approaches couldn't match. As their vehicle approached the main base, Diana realized that her real challenge was just beginning. Proving her abilities under controlled conditions was one thing, but applying her mathematical techniques in actual combat situations would require an entirely different level of precision and confidence. The setting sun painted the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and crimson, and Diana Rodriguez knew that everything in her life was about to change. 3 weeks after the Colorado exercises, Diana found herself aboard a C-130 transport aircraft flying through turbulent skies over the Mediterranean Sea. The classified briefing documents in her tactical bag outlined an assignment that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. She was being deployed as the primary targeting specialist for Operation Thunderstrike, a joint NATO mission to neutralize a terrorist network that had been coordinating attacks across 3 different countries. The aircraft's cargo bay was crowded with specialized equipment and personnel from various military units. Diana recognized some faces from advanced training programs, but most of the soldiers aboard were seasoned veterans with combat experience she couldn't even imagine. Master Sergeant Tony Valdez, a special operations forward observer with 12 years of battlefield deployments, occupied the seat across from her. "First real deployment, Rodriguez?" he asked, shouting over the aircraft's engine noise. "Yes, Sergeant." Valdez nodded approvingly. "I read your file. Your accuracy ratings from Fort Carson were off the charts. But combat calculations are different from training exercises. Environmental conditions change faster than you can measure them. Intelligence reports are often incomplete or outdated, and targets don't always behave the way your equations predict they will. Diana understood the warning embedded in his words, but she also felt a quiet confidence that hadn't existed during her training phase. The mathematical principles she relied on didn't change based on location or circumstances. Wind patterns, atmospheric pressure, gravitational effects, and ballistic trajectories followed the same physical laws whether she was calculating strikes in Colorado mountains or Mediterranean coastal regions. The mission briefing took place in a secure facility on the island of Crete, housed within a complex of modern buildings that contrasted sharply with the ancient Greek architecture visible in the surrounding countryside. Colonel Patricia Williams, the operation commander, stood before a large digital display showing satellite imagery of their operational area. Intelligence indicates that the terrorist cell we're targeting has established a command center in this mountainous region of northern Albania, Colonel Williams began, highlighting an area that appeared nearly inaccessible to conventional military forces. The facility is heavily fortified and surrounded by natural defensive positions that make direct assault extremely costly in terms of personnel and equipment. Diana studied the topographical data, noting the complex terrain features that would affect any precision strike attempts. The target area was located in a narrow valley surrounded by peaks that rose more than 2,000 meters above sea level. Weather patterns in the region were notoriously unpredictable, with sudden temperature changes and wind shifts that could occur within minutes. Our primary objective is the complete destruction of the command facility without collateral damage to nearby civilian settlements. The margin for error is essentially zero. A missile strike that misses by even 50 meters could result in civilian casualties that would compromise the entire operation. Captain Jennifer Hayes, the mission's intelligence officer, took over the briefing. Recent satellite reconnaissance shows increased activity around the target site. We believe the terrorist leadership is planning a coordinated attack series that could result in significant casualties across multiple European cities. Time is critical. We have a maximum engagement window of 72 hours before intelligence suggests they will relocate to an unknown location. Diana raised her hand. Ma'am, what are the atmospheric conditions in the target area? Are we dealing with consistent weather patterns, or should I expect significant variations that could affect targeting accuracy? Captain Hayes consulted her briefing notes. Weather reports indicate highly variable conditions. The target valley experiences microclimates that can change rapidly due to altitude variations and geographical features. Wind speeds can shift from calm to over 60 kilometers per hour within minutes, and temperature inversions are common during morning and evening hours. What about target movement? Is the command facility stationary, or are we dealing with mobile components that could relocate during our engagement window? Intelligence suggests the main facility is permanently positioned, but there are mobile command vehicles that move between the primary site and secondary positions on an irregular schedule. Diana processed this information, already beginning to formulate mathematical models that could account for the complex variables they would encounter. The targeting challenges were more sophisticated than anything she had faced during training, but the underlying principles remained the same. She would need to create predictive algorithms that could adapt to changing conditions in real time. The operational team was transported to their forward base aboard helicopters that flew at extremely low altitudes to avoid detection by hostile radar systems. Diana found herself pressed against a small window, watching the landscape change from cultivated farmland to increasingly rugged mountain terrain. The mathematical part of her mind automatically calculated their flight path, noting how the pilots adjusted their route to account for wind patterns and terrain masking. Their base of operations was established on a plateau approximately 40 kilometers from the target area, close enough for accurate missile strikes but distant enough to avoid detection by enemy surveillance systems. The site buzzed with activity as various military units set up communications equipment, missile launchers, and surveillance systems. Diana was assigned to work with Major Robert Chen, a career artillery officer who had commanded precision strike operations in multiple combat theaters.
Unlike some of the personnel she had encountered during training, Major Chen seemed immediately receptive to her mathematical approach to targeting problems. "I've read your performance evaluations from Fort Carson," Major Chen told her. "Your accuracy achievements were impressive, but this operational environment presents challenges that training exercises can't replicate. Are you confident your mathematical methods will translate to actual combat conditions?" "Yes, sir. The physical laws governing ballistic trajectories don't change based on whether we're in training or combat. What changes are the complexity and number of variables I need to account for simultaneously." Major Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Walk me through your targeting methodology. I need to understand how you achieve accuracy levels that exceed our standard military algorithms." Diana opened her laptop and began displaying the mathematical frameworks she had developed. Her approach involved creating real-time models that integrated dozens of environmental variables, from atmospheric density variations to gravitational anomalies caused by local geological features. Unlike standard targeting systems that rely on averaged atmospheric conditions, her methods calculate precise environmental factors for every point along a missile's flight path. Major Chen studied her equations, recognizing mathematical sophistication that exceeded anything in standard military training manuals. "How do you obtain real-time environmental data with this level of precision?" "I integrate information from multiple sources: satellite weather data, local meteorological stations, atmospheric pressure readings from aircraft operating in the area, and even seismic monitoring data that can indicate underground geological fields affecting gravitational fields."
And you can process all this information quickly enough to be useful in time-critical targeting situations? Diana's confidence was evident in her response. "During the Fort Carson exercises, I consistently calculated targeting solutions within 90 seconds, even for the most complex scenarios. Real combat conditions might add some complexity, but the fundamental mathematical processes are the same." The first operational test came sooner than expected. Surveillance teams reported unusual activity at a secondary target site, a mobile command vehicle that intelligence believed was coordinating communications between the main terrorist facility and external cells planning imminent attacks. The vehicle was positioned on a mountain road that provided excellent defensive advantages but also created complex targeting challenges. The target is mobile, moving along a serpentine mountain road with multiple elevation changes, reported the surveillance team leader. Current speed is approximately 25 kilometers per hour, but terrain forces frequent speed variations. Diana positioned herself at the targeting console while Major Chen coordinated with other elements of the strike team. The mobile target presented mathematical challenges that exceeded anything she had encountered during training. She needed to predict not only where the vehicle would be when the missile arrived, but also account for the varying atmospheric conditions the projectile would encounter as it traveled through different elevation zones. Her targeting computer displayed real-time satellite imagery of the winding mountain road, overlaid with mathematical models showing predicted vehicle positions at various time intervals. Diana's calculations had to account for the vehicle's changing speed as it navigated steep grades while simultaneously incorporating atmospheric data from multiple altitude zones. "Time to target engagement, 6 minutes, Major Chen announced. Diana began building her targeting solution, creating algorithms that predicted the vehicle's position based on terrain analysis and observed driving patterns. Her mathematics incorporated factors that standard military targeting systems couldn't process: the physics of vehicle movement on inclined surfaces, the behavioral patterns of drivers navigating unfamiliar mountain roads, and even the mechanical limitations of the specific vehicle type they were tracking. "Target has slowed significantly on the eastern slope," the surveillance team reported. "Current speed approximately 15 kilometers per hour." Diana adjusted her calculations in real time, modifying her predictive algorithms to account for the vehicle's changing movement pattern. Her targeting solution began converging on a specific point along the mountain road, where mathematics indicated the vehicle would be located when the missile completed its flight path. "Targeting solution ready," Diana announced. "Predicted intercept point is grid reference Alpha 774 Charlie 99 21. Confidence level 94%.
Major Chen reviewed her calculations on the tactical display. Your intercept point is on a section of road with significant elevation changes. Are you certain your atmospheric corrections account for the varying air density at different altitudes? Yes, sir. My calculations integrate atmospheric data for 17 different elevation zones along the missile's flight path. The targeting solution compensates for density variations, temperature gradients, and wind shear effects at each altitude level. The missile launch was authorized, and Diana watched her targeting data guide the projectile through complex atmospheric conditions toward its predicted intercept point. Her mathematics had calculated a flight path that curved three-dimensional space, accounting for environmental factors that changed continuously as the missile gained and lost altitude. Target vehicle is approaching the predicted intercept zone, the surveillance team reported. Diana monitored telemetry data streaming from the missile's guidance system, confirming that the projectile was following the precise trajectory her calculations had predicted. The mathematical models she had created were proving accurate even under the dynamic conditions of actual combat operations. Impact in 15 seconds, Major Chen announced. The missile struck the mountain road exactly where Diana's mathematics had predicted the target vehicle would be located. The explosion was captured by surveillance cameras, confirming complete destruction of the mobile command unit and its occupants. Direct hit confirmed, the surveillance team reported. Word of the successful strike spread quickly through the operational base. Diana found herself surrounded by military personnel who wanted to understand how she had achieved such precise targeting against a moving target in mountainous terrain. The mathematical methodology she had developed was clearly superior to standard military targeting approaches. Colonel Williams arrived at the targeting station within an hour of the successful strike. Rodriguez, that was exceptional work. Your targeting accuracy exceeded anything we've seen in previous operations. How quickly can you prepare targeting solutions for the primary objective? Diana looked at the satellite imagery of the main terrorist facility, noting the complex geographical features that would affect any precision strike attempt. I'll need approximately 4 hours to build comprehensive atmospheric models for the target area, sir. The facility's location presents significant targeting challenges due to elevation variations and surrounding terrain features. What kind of accuracy can you achieve against the primary target? Diana's mathematical mind was already processing the variables. Given sufficient environmental data and stable atmospheric conditions, I should be able to achieve accuracy within 10 meters of the designated impact point. Colonel Williams smiled grimly. Rodriguez, if you can deliver that level of precision, this mission will set new standards for surgical strike operations. As evening approached over the Mediterranean operational days, Diana began the most complex targeting calculations of her career. The primary terrorist facility represented a mathematical challenge that would test every technique she had developed, requiring precision that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but Diana Rodriguez felt ready to prove that mathematical precision could change the outcome of modern warfare. The pre-dawn hours at the Mediterranean base carried an unusual stillness that seemed to amplify every sound. The distant hum of generators, the soft clicking of keyboards in the communications tent, and the rhythmic footsteps of security patrols making their rounds. Diana had been awake since midnight, hunched over multiple computer screens that displayed an intricate web of atmospheric data, satellite imagery, and mathematical models more complex than anything she had ever attempted. The primary target facility nestled in the Albanian mountains like a fortress carved from living rock. Intelligence reports indicated that the terrorist command center had been constructed within a natural cave system, with reinforced concrete barriers and multiple escape tunnels that made conventional assault virtually impossible. The only viable approach was a precision strike that could penetrate the facility's defenses and collapse the entire underground complex. Diana's targeting challenge was unprecedented in its complexity. The missile would need to follow a flight path that curved through multiple atmospheric zones, each with different environmental characteristics that would affect the projectile's trajectory. The target itself was partially obscured by overhanging rock formations that created wind tunnel effects, and the surrounding geography included thermal vents that generated unpredictable air currents. Rodriguez, status report, Major Chen called from the Tactical Operations Center as he reviewed the latest intelligence updates. Sir, I've completed atmospheric modeling for the primary flight corridor, but I'm encountering some unusual environmental factors that require additional analysis, Diana replied, gesturing toward her screens. The target valley contains several geothermal features that are creating temperature anomalies. Hot springs and steam vents are generating air density variations that could deflect the missile by up to 30 meters if not properly accounted for. Major Chen approached her workstation, studying the complex mathematical displays that covered multiple monitors. Can you compensate for these thermal effects? Yes, sir, but I need current temperature readings from the target area, sir. Satellite data isn't precise enough for the level of accuracy we require. I need real-time thermal measurements from ground-based sensors.
Within 2 hours, a reconnaissance team had positioned advanced thermal sensors at strategic locations around the target valley. Diana watched as temperature data began streaming directly to her targeting computer, revealing atmospheric conditions that were far more complex than initial intelligence had suggested. The geothermal activity was creating convection currents that rose from the valley floor to altitudes exceeding 3,000 meters. These thermal columns were generating wind patterns that shifted direction and intensity based on underground geological activity that followed no predictable schedule. Diana realized she was dealing with atmospheric chaos theory, environmental conditions so complex that tiny variations could produce dramatically different outcomes. Major Chen, I need to modify my approach. The thermal activity in the target area is too dynamic for static calculations. I'm going to have to create adaptive algorithms that can adjust the missile's flight path in real time as it encounters changing atmospheric conditions. Is that even possible with our current missile guidance systems? Diana pulled up technical specifications for the precision-guided munitions they would be using. The guidance systems have enough computational capacity to handle adaptive algorithms, but I'll need to program multiple contingency calculations that can execute automatically during flight. She began writing mathematical code that would essentially teach the missile to think for itself during the final phases of its approach. Her algorithms created decision trees that allowed the guidance system to select optimal trajectory adjustments based on atmospheric conditions it encountered in real time. The programming work required mathematical precision that pushed Diana's abilities to their absolute limits. Each line of code represented thousands of calculations that would execute in milliseconds during the missile's flight. A single error in her mathematics could result in complete mission failure or worse, civilian casualties in nearby villages. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a civilian mathematician from the Defense Department's Advanced Research Division, arrived at the base just as Diana was completing her adaptive targeting algorithms. Dr. Mitchell had flown directly from Washington after receiving reports about Diana's unprecedented targeting achievements. Ms. Rodriguez, I've reviewed your performance data from both training and combat operations, Dr. Mitchell said, examining Diana's computer displays with obvious fascination. Your mathematical approach represents a fundamental advancement in precision targeting technology. The algorithms you've developed could revolutionize how military strikes are calculated and executed. Diana appreciated the recognition, but her focus remained entirely on the mission at hand. Dr. Mitchell, I'm dealing with atmospheric conditions that are more complex than anything covered in theoretical literature. Do you have any suggestions for handling chaotic thermal dynamics in mountainous terrain? Dr. Mitchell studied Diana's thermal modeling data, recognizing mathematical sophistication that exceeded most PhD-level research. Have you considered incorporating fractal geometry principles into your atmospheric predictions? Chaotic systems often exhibit self-similar patterns that can be mathematically modeled. Diana's eyes lit up with understanding. Fractal scaling for thermal convection patterns? That could work. She immediately began modifying her algorithms, incorporating mathematical principles that treated the chaotic thermal activity as a self-organizing system with predictable scaling properties. The new approach required her to think about atmospheric conditions in completely different terms. Instead of trying to predict exact thermal patterns, her mathematics would identify the underlying geometric structures that governed how thermal energy moved through the atmosphere.
This fractal approach allowed her to calculate probable atmospheric states rather than trying to predict precise conditions. As afternoon shadows began lengthening across the operational base, Colonel Williams convened the final mission briefing. Intelligence reports indicated that terrorist leadership was preparing to evacuate the mountain facility within 18 hours. The strike had to be executed before sunset to ensure maximum effectiveness and prevent the targets from escaping to unknown locations. Current weather conditions show favorable atmospheric stability for the next 6 hours, reported the meteorological officer. Wind speeds in the target area are moderate, with no significant storm systems approaching. Diana knew that surface weather reports provided only superficial information about the atmospheric complexity she would need to navigate. Her thermal sensors were showing geothermal activity that created environmental conditions completely independent of regional weather patterns. Ma'am, I need to point out that local atmospheric conditions in the target valley are significantly different from regional weather forecasts. Geothermal activity is creating thermal dynamics that could affect targeting accuracy regardless of surface weather conditions. Colonel Williams nodded. What's your confidence level for achieving the required precision? Diana considered the question carefully. Her mathematical models were the most sophisticated she had ever created, incorporating fractal geometry, chaos theory, and adaptive algorithms that pushed the boundaries of current targeting technology. But she was also attempting something that had never been done before in actual combat conditions. 91% confidence, ma'am. My calculations account for all known variables, and the adaptive algorithms should handle unexpected atmospheric changes during flight. That's acceptable for mission authorization. Rodriguez, you have the green light for final targeting calculations. Diana returned to her workstation as the base began preparing for the strike operation. Multiple missile systems were being positioned and calibrated, while communications teams established secure links with command authorities in Washington and Brussels. The weight of international attention added pressure that Diana tried to block from her consciousness. Her final targeting solution required integration of data from 17 different sources: satellite imagery, thermal sensors, atmospheric pressure readings, gravitational measurements, and even seismic data that could indicate underground geological activity affecting air density. The mathematical complexity was staggering, but Diana's mind processed the information with the same focused intensity she had demonstrated throughout her academic career. The targeting coordinates that emerged from her calculations specified an impact point that seemed mathematically impossible. Diana's solution called for the missile to follow a curving trajectory that appeared to violate basic principles of ballistic flight. Her mathematics predicted that the projectile would need to execute multiple course corrections during its flight, adjusting its path based on thermal conditions it encountered in real time. Master Sergeant Valdez, who had been monitoring Diana's work throughout the deployment, approached with an expression of professional respect. Rodriguez, I've watched precision targeting operations for 15 years, and I've never seen mathematical modeling at this level of sophistication. If your calculations are correct, this strike will achieve accuracy that sets new standards for surgical military operations. Diana felt the weight of responsibility that came with such recognition. Her mathematical techniques were being tested under conditions where failure could have strategic implications extending far beyond the immediate mission. Success would validate her approach and potentially change how military targeting was conducted. Failure could result in mission catastrophe and loss of confidence in mathematical innovation.
The final system checks were completed as sunset approached over the Mediterranean. Diana's targeting data had been loaded into the missile guidance systems, and all environmental sensors were providing real-time atmospheric updates. The mathematical framework she had constructed was ready to guide a precision strike through some of the most challenging atmospheric conditions ever encountered in military operations. All stations report ready for mission execution, Colonel Williams announced over the Tactical Communications Network. Diana positioned herself at the targeting monitor, watching real-time data streams that would track the missile's flight path through every phase of its journey to the target. Her mathematics would be tested by physics, atmospheric science, and the unforgiving precision requirements of actual combat. Launch authorization confirmed, Major Chen reported. Rodriguez, your targeting solution is active. The missile erupted from its launcher with controlled violence that shook the entire operational base.
Diana immediately began tracking telemetry data that confirmed her mathematical predictions were guiding the projectile along its planned trajectory. The adaptive algorithms were already making micro-adjustments based on atmospheric conditions the missile encountered during its initial flight phase. Flight Phase 1 complete, Diana announced, monitoring data that showed the missile had successfully navigated the first atmospheric zone, transitioning to thermal corridor approach. This was the critical phase where her fractal geometry calculations would be tested against the chaotic thermal dynamics of the target valley. Diana watched as her algorithms began processing real-time atmospheric data, making trajectory adjustments that seemed to defy conventional understanding of ballistic flight paths. "The missile is executing lateral corrections," reported the flight tracking officer. "Trajectory appears to be curving through three-dimensional space." Diana's mathematics were working exactly as predicted. The missile was adapting its flight path based on thermal conditions it encountered, following a trajectory that maximized accuracy while compensating for atmospheric complexity that would have confused traditional targeting systems. "Approaching final approach phase," Diana announced, her voice steady despite the enormous pressure. "All guidance systems functioning within calculated parameters." The moment of truth had arrived. Years of mathematical study, months of military training, and weeks of intense preparation were converging on a single point in space and time where mathematics would determine the outcome of a critical military operation. Diana Rodriguez watched her calculations guide a precision weapon toward its target, knowing that the next 60 seconds would validate or destroy everything she had worked to achieve. The tactical display showed the missile's position as a pulsing red dot moving through a three-dimensional representation of the Albanian mountain range. Diana's eyes remained fixed on the telemetry data streaming across her monitors, each number confirming that her mathematical predictions were guiding the projectile through atmospheric conditions that would have confounded traditional targeting systems. "Altitude 9,000 meters and descending," reported the flight tracking officer. "The missile is responding to automated trajectory adjustments." Diana watched her adaptive algorithms execute in real time, making split-second course corrections as the missile encountered the complex thermal dynamics she had predicted. The guidance system was functioning like a mathematical brain, processing atmospheric data and recalculating its flight path dozens of times per second.
"Thermal corridor entry in 23 seconds," Diana announced, her voice maintaining professional calm despite the enormous pressure. This was the moment when her fractal geometry calculations would face their ultimate test against the chaotic convection currents rising from the valley floor. The missile's onboard sensors began detecting the thermal anomalies Diana's mathematics had predicted. Temperature variations of more than 40 degrees Celsius created air density changes that would have thrown conventional targeting systems completely off course. But Diana's algorithms treated these chaotic conditions as mathematical patterns that could be navigated through geometric scaling principles. "Executing thermal corridor adjustments," Diana reported, watching as her calculations guided the missile through a series of lateral movements that seemed to violate basic physics. The projectile was essentially surfing through thermal currents, using the same atmospheric forces that created targeting challenges to enhance its precision approach. Major Chen stood behind Diana's workstation, studying displays that showed mathematical complexity beyond his military training. "Rodriguez, your missile is following a flight path that curves in directions I've never seen before. Are these movements normal?" "Yes, sir. The adaptive algorithms are using thermal convection patterns to optimize the trajectory. Instead of fighting against atmospheric chaos, the mathematics are incorporating that chaos into the guidance solution." Dr. Mitchell leaned forward, recognizing the theoretical implications of what Diana had achieved. "You're treating atmospheric turbulence as a navigational tool rather than an obstacle. That's a fundamental paradigm shift in how we think about precision targeting." Diana nodded briefly but kept her attention focused on the telemetry data. The fractal geometry approach allows the guidance system to identify predictable patterns within chaotic thermal dynamics. The missile is following mathematical pathways that exist within the atmospheric confusion. The projectile continued its descent through increasingly complex environmental conditions. Diana's thermal sensors showed convection currents that rose and fell in irregular patterns, creating atmospheric conditions that changed faster than human reaction time could process. But her mathematical algorithms processed these changes as data points within geometric frameworks that remained consistent despite surface chaos. "Final approach phase initiated," announced the flight tracking officer. "Time to impact 47 seconds. This was the most critical phase of the entire operation. The missile would need to navigate through the lowest atmospheric layers where thermal effects were most intense, while simultaneously executing the precision adjustments necessary to penetrate the target facility's reinforced structure at exactly the right angle and velocity. Diana's targeting solution required the missile to strike a specific point on the mountainside that would allow the projectile to penetrate through rock layers and detonate within the underground command center. The impact angle had to be precise within 2 degrees, and the velocity calculations had to account for the resistance characteristics of both rock and reinforced concrete. "Missile approaching final thermal barrier," Diana reported, monitoring data that showed the projectile entering the most chaotic atmospheric zone near the valley floor. Her algorithms were processing environmental readings that changed continuously, making thousands of micro-adjustments to maintain the calculated trajectory. The thermal sensors revealed atmospheric conditions that exceeded even Diana's mathematical predictions. Geothermal vents were generating convection columns that reached altitudes of more than 4,000 meters, creating wind patterns that shifted direction and intensity with no apparent pattern. Traditional targeting systems would have been overwhelmed by the environmental complexity. But Diana's adaptive algorithms treated this chaos as mathematical information that could be processed and incorporated into targeting solutions. The missile's guidance system was functioning like a highly sophisticated computer, analyzing atmospheric data and making trajectory adjustments faster than any human mathematician could calculate. "Impact in 15 seconds, the flight tracking officer announced. Diana held her breath as her mathematics guided the missile through its final approach. Years of academic study, months of military training, and weeks of operational preparation had led to this single moment when mathematical precision would determine mission success or failure. The projectile executed one final course correction, adjusting its impact angle by less than 1 degree based on atmospheric readings taken milliseconds before strike. Diana's calculations had predicted this adjustment would be necessary to account for thermal effects that occurred only in the immediate vicinity of the target. "Impact confirmed," reported the surveillance team monitoring the target site. The explosion was captured by multiple cameras positioned around the valley, showing a precisely controlled detonation that penetrated the mountainside exactly where Diana's mathematics had predicted. The missile struck the rock face at the optimal angle and velocity, driving through geological layers to detonate within the underground terrorist facility. "Target destroyed," announced the surveillance team leader. "Complete collapse of the underground complex confirmed." The Tactical Operations Center erupted in subdued celebration as personnel realized they had witnessed something unprecedented in military targeting operations. Diana's mathematical approach had achieved precision that exceeded the capabilities of any existing targeting system, proving that academic mathematics could enhance military effectiveness in ways previously thought impossible. Colonel Williams approached Diana's workstation with an expression that mixed professional admiration with genuine amazement. "Rodriguez, what you accomplished today represents a fundamental advancement in precision targeting technology. Your mathematical methods achieved accuracy levels that will change how future military operations are planned and executed." Diana felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion as the full implications of her success began to register. She had proven that mathematical innovation could exceed traditional military approaches, but she also understood that her techniques would need to be systematized and taught to others if they were going to have lasting impact.
Ma'am, the adaptive algorithms I developed could be integrated into existing missile guidance systems, Diana replied. With proper programming, these mathematical approaches could enhance targeting accuracy for multiple weapon systems across different operational environments. Dr. Mitchell was already taking notes on the mathematical frameworks Diana had demonstrated. Ms. Rodriguez, your work represents a breakthrough that extends far beyond military applications. The fractal geometry approaches you used for atmospheric modeling could revolutionize weather prediction, aerospace engineering, and multiple scientific disciplines. Master Sergeant Valdez joined the group surrounding Diana's workstation, his expression reflecting the professional respect of a veteran who had witnessed something extraordinary. Rodriguez, I've participated in precision targeting operations across 4 different combat theaters, and I've never seen anything approaching this level of accuracy. Your mathematical approach just set new standards for surgical military strikes. The mission debriefing took place in the secure conference room where Colonel Williams reviewed the operation's outcomes with senior personnel from multiple military branches. Diana found herself at the center of discussions about mathematical techniques that had exceeded everyone's expectations for precision targeting capabilities. The strike achieved complete destruction of the terrorist command facility with 0 collateral damage, Colonel Williams reported to the assembled officers. Rodriguez's targeting methods guided the missile to impact within 2 meters of the designated coordinates despite atmospheric conditions that would have challenged conventional targeting systems. Brigadier General Michael Stevens, who had flown in from NATO headquarters to observe the operation, addressed Diana directly. Ms. Rodriguez, your mathematical innovations have demonstrated capabilities that could transform modern warfare. We need to discuss how your techniques can be incorporated into standard military training and operational procedures. Diana realized that her academic journey from mathematics student to precision targeting specialist represented more than personal achievement. Her work had proven that mathematical innovation could enhance military effectiveness in ways that traditional approaches couldn't match, opening possibilities for precision operations that had been theoretically impossible. Sir, the adaptive algorithms I developed are scalable and can be modified for different operational environments, Diana replied. The mathematical principles work equally well in urban settings, maritime environments, or any geographical area where precision targeting is required. Over the following weeks, Diana found herself working with teams of mathematicians, engineers, and military specialists to systematize her targeting approaches into training programs that could be taught to other personnel. Her mathematical frameworks were being analyzed and refined by some of the most advanced research institutions in the world. The Defense Department established a new advanced mathematical targeting division with Diana as its first director. Her office at the Pentagon was equipped with computational resources that allowed her to develop even more sophisticated algorithms for future precision operations. Dr. Mitchell joined Diana's research team, bringing additional expertise in chaos theory and fractal mathematics that enhanced the theoretical foundations of their targeting approaches. Together, they began developing mathematical frameworks that could handle targeting challenges beyond anything currently encountered in military operations. Diana, your work has opened an entirely new field of applied mathematics, Dr. Mitchell observed during one of their research sessions. The techniques you developed for atmospheric modeling could be adapted for space-based targeting, underwater operations, or even planetary exploration missions. Diana continued to refine her mathematical approaches, developing targeting solutions for hypothetical scenarios that pushed the boundaries of current technology. Her algorithms were being tested against environmental conditions that ranged from Arctic operations to desert warfare, proving that mathematical precision could enhance military effectiveness across all operational environments. The story of Diana Rodriguez became legendary within military circles, inspiring a new generation of mathematically oriented personnel who saw opportunities to apply academic knowledge to practical military challenges. Her journey from mocked trainee to precision targeting specialist demonstrated that intellectual innovation could exceed traditional approaches when properly applied to real-world problems. Years later, as Diana reviewed targeting data from operations around the world, she reflected on the path that had brought her from Arizona classrooms to international recognition as a mathematical innovator. Her academic obsession with numbers had evolved into capabilities that enhanced military precision and potentially saved countless lives through surgical strike accuracy. The mathematical principles she had discovered continued to evolve and improve, inspiring research that extended far beyond military operations. Diana's work had proven that theoretical mathematics could solve practical problems in ways that changed fundamental approaches to complex challenges. Her targeting algorithms were being used by allied military forces around the world, achieving precision levels that had redefined expectations for surgical military operations. Diana Rodriguez had transformed from an isolated mathematics student into a pioneering military innovator whose work changed how precision targeting was understood and executed. Her journey proved that mathematical brilliance, when properly applied and supported, could achieve outcomes that exceeded traditional limitations and open new possibilities for technological advancement. The young woman who had once eaten lunch alone while solving differential equations had become a respected leader whose mathematical innovations enhanced military capabilities and inspired new approaches to complex problem-solving across multiple disciplines. Mathematics had not only been Diana's passion, it had become her contribution to a safer, more precise world where intellectual innovation could achieve what traditional approaches could not.
6 months after the Albanian operation, Diana Rodriguez stood before a wall of monitors in her new Pentagon office watching real-time data streams from 12 different global hotspots where her mathematical targeting systems were being deployed. The Advanced Mathematical Targeting Division had grown from a theoretical concept to a fully operational department with 43 specialists working around the clock to support precision operations worldwide. The secure phone on her desk rang with the distinctive tone reserved for emergency communications from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Diana answered immediately, recognizing the voice of Admiral Patricia Hawkins, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. "Diana, we have a situation developing in the South China Sea that requires your immediate attention. Chinese military forces have established an illegal missile installation on Scarborough Shoal, threatening commercial shipping lanes used by multiple allied nations. Intelligence indicates they're preparing to activate an advanced anti-ship missile system that could effectively close those waterways to international traffic." Diana pulled up satellite imagery of the disputed reef on her main display, immediately noting the geographical challenges that would complicate any targeting solution. Scarborough Shoal was essentially a submerged coral formation that appeared and disappeared based on tidal conditions, creating a targeting environment where the physical geography changed every 6 hours. "Admiral, what's the operational timeline? How quickly do we need to neutralize this installation?" "Chinese forces are conducting final system tests. Our intelligence suggests they'll declare the missile battery operational within 72 hours. Once active, those weapons could target any vessel within a 200-kilometer radius, effectively controlling one of the world's most critical shipping channels." Diana studied the targeting data, recognizing mathematical challenges that exceeded even the Albanian operation in complexity. The missile installation was positioned on a reef that sat only 3 meters above sea level at low tide and was completely submerged during high tide periods. Any precision strike would need to account for constantly changing environmental conditions and the possibility that the target might be underwater during the engagement window. "Ma'am, I'll need comprehensive oceanographic data for the target area, tide tables, current patterns, wave height measurements, and underwater topography. The mathematical models will also require real-time atmospheric data, since ocean spray and humidity will create environmental conditions completely different from land-based operations. You'll have full access to naval oceanographic resources and satellite monitoring. Diana, this operation has significant strategic implications. If we can't neutralize this installation through precision strikes, the alternative might be a direct military confrontation that could escalate into a much larger conflict." Within hours, Diana's team was analyzing oceanographic data that revealed environmental complexity beyond anything they had previously encountered.
Dr. Rebecca Santos, a naval oceanographer recently assigned to Diana's division, provided expertise on maritime atmospheric conditions that would affect targeting calculations. The humidity levels in the target area create air density variations that change continuously based on wind patterns and ocean temperature, Dr. Santos explained, displaying atmospheric models on the division's main tactical screen. Salt spray from wave action introduced particles into the atmosphere that could affect missile guidance systems, and the constant moisture creates thermal effects that differ significantly from land-based operations. Diana began developing mathematical frameworks that treated the ocean environment as a dynamic system where atmospheric and oceanographic conditions interacted in complex ways. Her algorithms needed to account for factors that didn't exist in terrestrial targeting scenarios: wave-generated atmospheric disturbances, salt particle concentrations, and the gravitational effects of massive water movement caused by tidal forces. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Vasquez, Diana's deputy director, coordinated with naval intelligence to obtain real-time oceanographic measurements from submarines operating in the South China Sea. The data revealed environmental conditions that challenged existing understanding of maritime targeting operations. Diana, the oceanographic sensors are showing underwater current patterns that could affect the target's structural stability. Colonel Vasquez reported, the coral reef is essentially floating on underwater currents that shifts its position by several meters throughout each tidal cycle. Diana realized she was dealing with a targeting scenario where the objective was literally moving in three-dimensional space based on oceanographic forces. Her mathematical models would need to predict not only atmospheric conditions, but also the precise position of a target that moved continuously due to tidal and current effects. I need predictive algorithms that can calculate the reef's position at any given moment based on tidal data and current patterns. The targeting solution will have to incorporate oceanographic physics to determine exactly where the installation will be when the missile arrives. The mathematical complexity required Diana to collaborate with marine physicists, oceanographers, and atmospheric specialists whose expertise extended far beyond traditional military targeting knowledge. Her team grew to include civilian scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Dr. James Liu, a specialist in marine atmospheric physics, joined the team to provide expertise on how ocean environments affect precision munitions. Diana, the atmospheric conditions over open ocean create unique challenges for guided missiles. Water vapor concentrations can vary dramatically based on wave action and wind patterns, and salt particles can interfere with electronic guidance systems in ways we're only beginning to understand. Diana's mathematical frameworks evolved to incorporate oceanographic variables that had never been considered in military targeting operations. Her algorithms calculated atmospheric density based on humidity levels, adjusted trajectory predictions for salt particle interference, and even accounted for the electromagnetic effects of large-scale water movement on missile guidance systems. The targeting solution that emerged from her calculations was unlike anything previously attempted in military operations. Diana's mathematics predicted that the missile would need to execute a series of course corrections based on real-time atmospheric readings while simultaneously adjusting its approach angle to compensate for the target's movement due to tidal forces. The optimal engagement window occurs during the 47-minute period when tidal forces position the reef at its most stable location. During this time, the installation will be approximately 2.3 meters above sea level, providing sufficient exposure for a precision strike while minimizing atmospheric interference from wave-generated spray. Admiral Jennifer Morrison, commander of the Pacific Fleet, reviewed Diana's targeting proposal during a secure video conference that included senior officials from multiple allied nations. The international nature of the operation added diplomatic complexity to an already challenging mathematical problem. Ms. Rodriguez, your targeting solution calls for a precision strike during a very narrow engagement window. What's your confidence level for achieving the required accuracy given the environmental challenges?
Diana had spent weeks analyzing every variable that could affect the mission outcome, creating mathematical models that incorporated oceanographic data from multiple sources and atmospheric readings taken by specialized aircraft operating in the target area. Admiral, my calculations show 87% confidence for achieving impact within 10 meters of the designated coordinates. The environmental challenges are significant, but the mathematical frameworks account for all known variables affecting missile performance in maritime conditions. The operational approval came with conditions that reflected the mission's strategic sensitivity. Diana's targeting solution would guide a single precision munition launched from a naval vessel positioned more than 400 kilometers from the target, ensuring that no military personnel would be placed at risk during the engagement. USS Hampton, a Virginia-class submarine, was positioned to provide real-time oceanographic data during the final approach phase. Diana's team established direct communication links with the submarine's sensors, allowing her algorithms to receive environmental updates throughout the missile's flight path. Final targeting calculations complete, Diana announced as the engagement window approached. All oceanographic and atmospheric variables have been incorporated into the guidance solution. The missile launch occurred precisely at the moment when Diana's mathematics predicted optimal environmental conditions. Her algorithms immediately began processing real-time data from multiple sources, guiding the projectile through atmospheric conditions that changed continuously due to ocean effects. Missile responding to maritime atmospheric adjustments, reported the flight tracking officer, monitoring telemetry data. Diana watched her mathematical models guide the missile through environmental conditions that had never been encountered in previous targeting operations. The projectile was adjusting its flight path based on humidity readings, salt particle concentrations, and even the electromagnetic effects generated by wave action across hundreds of square kilometers of ocean surface. Target area atmospheric conditions nominal, Diana announced, monitoring data that confirmed her oceanographic predictions were accurate. Tidal positioning places the installation at optimal exposure level. The missile executed its final approach through atmospheric conditions that represented the most complex targeting environment ever attempted in military operations. Diana's mathematics had successfully integrated oceanographic physics, marine atmospheric science, and precision targeting technology into a guidance solution that exceeded the capabilities of any existing military system. Impact confirmed, reported the surveillance team monitoring the target site, direct hit achieved with precision accuracy. The successful neutralization of the South China Sea installation established Diana's reputation as the foremost expert in precision targeting under extreme environmental conditions. Her mathematical approaches had proven effective across multiple operational environments, from mountainous terrain to maritime operations. Within months, Diana's division was developing targeting solutions for scenarios that pushed the boundaries of current military technology. Arctic operations where atmospheric conditions changed rapidly due to ice formation, desert environments where heat mirages created optical and atmospheric disturbances, and even preliminary research into space-based targeting systems. Her mathematical innovations had transformed from academic curiosity to strategic military capabilities that enhanced precision operations worldwide. Diana Rodriguez had become more than a targeting specialist. She was a mathematical pioneer whose work continued to reveal new possibilities for applying academic knowledge to practical military challenges. The journey that began with mockery during training exercises had evolved into recognition as one of the most innovative military mathematicians of her generation, proving that intellectual precision could achieve outcomes that traditional approaches could not match. 2 years after establishing the Advanced Mathematical Targeting Division, Diana Rodriguez found herself facing a challenge that would test the absolute limits of mathematical precision. The secure briefing room at the Pentagon, filled with representatives from NASA, the Space Force, and multiple international space agencies, as they gathered to discuss what intelligence officials were calling the most sophisticated threat ever detected in Earth's orbital environment. General Marcus Thompson, newly appointed commander of Space Force operations, activated a holographic display showing the orbital mechanics of a rogue satellite that had appeared without warning in geosynchronous orbit. The object was unlike anything in existing space tracking databases, exhibiting capabilities that suggest advanced technology from an unknown source.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing is a satellite that materialized in orbit 72 hours ago with no corresponding launch signature from any known space program, General Thompson announced. Initial analysis suggests the object is actively jamming GPS signals, disrupting communication satellites, and appears to be conducting reconnaissance on military installations across multiple continents. Diana studied the orbital data, immediately recognizing mathematical challenges that exceeded anything she had encountered in atmospheric or maritime operations. Space-based targeting involved physics that operated in three-dimensional environments where traditional concepts of up, down, and atmospheric resistance simply didn't apply. Sir, what are the object's orbital characteristics? Is it maintaining a stable position, or are we dealing with active maneuvering capabilities? That's where this gets complicated, Rodriguez. The satellite is executing orbital adjustments that shouldn't be possible with conventional propulsion systems. It's changing altitude, inclination, and even orbital plane with precision that suggests technology we don't currently possess. Dr. Elena Kozlov, NASA's leading expert on orbital mechanics, provided additional technical details that highlighted the unprecedented nature of the threat. Diana, this object is demonstrating capabilities that violate our understanding of current space technology. It's maintaining perfect geosynchronous position while simultaneously conducting orbital maneuvers that would require enormous amounts of fuel using traditional systems. Diana realized she was dealing with a targeting scenario where the conventional rules of physics might not apply in ways she had previously assumed. Her mathematical models would need to account for propulsion technologies that operated according to principles her algorithms had never been designed to handle. Dr. Kozlov, what orbital tracking data do we have? I'll need precise measurements of the object's movement patterns to develop targeting algorithms for space-based engagement. We have continuous tracking from multiple ground-based observatories and orbital telescopes. The data shows movement patterns that appear to follow mathematical sequences rather than traditional orbital mechanics. The satellite is essentially dancing through space according to geometric principles we don't fully understand.
Diana spent the following weeks immersed in orbital mechanics that pushed her mathematical abilities into entirely new territories. Space-based targeting required her to think in terms of three-dimensional geometry where objects moved at velocities exceeding 17,000 miles per hour while operating in environments with no atmospheric resistance or gravitational anchoring points. Her team expanded to include astrophysicists, aerospace engineers, and mathematicians who specialized in celestial mechanics. Dr. Andrew Chen, a theoretical physicist from MIT, joined the division to provide expertise on relativistic effects that could influence precision targeting in space environments. Diana, space-based targeting involves mathematical complexities that don't exist in terrestrial operations, Dr. Chen explained during one of their planning sessions. Objects in orbit are simultaneously falling toward Earth and moving sideways fast enough to continuously miss the planet. Your targeting algorithms will need to account for orbital velocities, gravitational effects from multiple celestial bodies, and even relativistic time dilation effects. Diana began developing mathematical frameworks that treated space as a dynamic environment where position, velocity, and time were interconnected in ways that required entirely new approaches to precision targeting. Her algorithms needed to calculate intercept courses between objects moving at orbital velocities while accounting for gravitational influences from Earth, Moon, and Sun. The computational requirements exceeded the capabilities of her division's existing systems. The Defense Department authorized installation of quantum computing resources that could process the astronomical number of calculations required for real-time space-based targeting solutions. The quantum systems allow us to model orbital mechanics with precision that approaches theoretical limits, Diana explained to her team as they learned to operate the new computational equipment. We can now calculate targeting solutions that account for gravitational influences from every significant mass in the solar system. The targeting challenge was complicated by intelligence reports suggesting the rogue satellite was actively scanning Earth-based facilities and potentially preparing to deploy some form of orbital weapon system.
The strategic implications meant that failure to neutralize the threat could result in catastrophic damage to critical infrastructure worldwide. Colonel Sarah Martinez, now Diana's senior military liaison, coordinated with Space Force units that were developing kinetic interceptor systems capable of engaging targets in geosynchronous orbit. The weapons represented the cutting edge of space-based military technology, but their effectiveness depended entirely on targeting precision that had never been attempted in operational conditions. Diana, the interceptor systems require targeting accuracy measured in meters across distances of more than 35,000 kilometers. We're essentially trying to hit a moving target the size of a school bus from a distance equivalent to the Earth's circumference. Diana's mathematical models revealed that space-based precision targeting required calculations that incorporated factors completely absent from terrestrial operations. Solar radiation pressure could alter trajectories over long distances. Gravitational influences from the Moon affected orbital mechanics in ways that changed throughout lunar cycles. And even magnetic field interactions could influence the flight paths of metallic objects moving at orbital velocities. The targeting solution requires integration of astrophysical data from multiple sources, Diana announced during a briefing attended by senior officials from multiple government agencies. Solar wind measurements, lunar gravitational data, magnetic field mapping, and even cosmic radiation levels all affect precision targeting in space environments. Dr. Maria Santos from the European Space Agency joined Diana's team through a classified international cooperation agreement, bringing expertise in space-based sensor systems that could provide real-time environmental data during orbital engagements. Her knowledge of how spacecraft systems performed in the harsh environment of space proved essential for developing practical targeting solutions. Diana, space presents environmental challenges that don't exist in any terrestrial targeting scenario. Temperature variations can exceed 300 degrees Celsius between sunlit and shadowed areas. Radiation levels fluctuate based on solar activity, and the complete absence of atmospheric resistance means that tiny forces can produce significant trajectory changes over orbital distances. The mathematical frameworks Diana developed for space-based targeting represented a fundamental advancement in celestial mechanics applications. Her algorithms could predict the precise position of objects moving at orbital velocities while accounting for gravitational influences, radiation pressure, and electromagnetic effects that operated across the vast distances of space. The engagement authorization came with conditions that reflected the unprecedented nature of space-based military operations. Diana's targeting solution would guide kinetic interceptors launched from ground-based systems toward a target moving at more than 3 kilometers per second at an altitude where a single degree of error could result in missing by hundreds of kilometers. Final orbital mechanics calculations complete, Diana announced as tracking systems confirmed the rogue satellite was maintaining its threatening position above critical infrastructure targets. Targeting solution incorporates real-time gravitational data, solar radiation measurements, and predicted orbital mechanics for both interceptor and target. The kinetic interceptors launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base with timing precision calculated to microsecond accuracy by Diana's quantum computing systems. Her algorithms immediately began processing telemetry data from multiple sources, guiding the interceptors through the complex gravitational environment of Earth's orbital space. Interceptors responding to space-based navigation adjustments, reported the mission control officer monitoring launch telemetry. Trajectory modifications executing according to calculated orbital mechanics. Diana watched her mathematical models guide military hardware through an environment where human beings had never attempted precision targeting operations. The interceptors were adjusting their flight paths based on gravitational readings, solar radiation measurements, and electromagnetic field data that her algorithms processed in real time. Target acquisition confirmed, Diana announced, monitoring data that showed her targeting calculations had successfully guided the interceptors to within engagement range of the rogue satellite. Orbital mechanics predictions achieving required precision. The kinetic impact occurred at a relative velocity exceeding 8 kilometers per second, creating a precise collision that completely destroyed the threatening satellite while minimizing debris that could endanger other orbital assets. Diana's mathematics had achieved targeting precision in space that established new standards for orbital military operations. "Target neutralized," reported the Space Force tracking officer, "complete destruction confirmed with minimal debris generation." The successful space-based engagement established Diana Rodriguez as the foremost expert in mathematical targeting across multiple operational environments. Her innovations had proven effective in mountainous terrain, maritime conditions, and now orbital space, demonstrating mathematical precision that exceeded all existing military capabilities. In the years that followed, Diana's Advanced Mathematical Targeting Division became the primary resource for precision operations that pushed the boundaries of current technology. Her mathematical frameworks were applied to scenarios ranging from asteroid deflection missions to theoretical targeting systems for lunar and Mars operations.
The young woman who had once been mocked for her mathematical obsession had become the architect of targeting systems that protected global security through unprecedented precision. Diana's journey from isolated student to international recognition proved that intellectual innovation could achieve outcomes that traditional approaches could never match. Her mathematical legacy extended far beyond military applications, inspiring new approaches to space exploration, atmospheric science, and precision engineering that influenced multiple scientific disciplines. The targeting algorithms she developed continued to evolve, incorporated into systems that enhanced accuracy and safety for operations across Earth and beyond. Diana Rodriguez had transformed mathematical theory into practical capabilities that changed how precision targeting was understood and executed. Her story became an inspiration for future generations of mathematicians and engineers who saw opportunities to apply academic knowledge to real-world challenges that seemed impossible until someone proved they were merely difficult. The calculations that began in childhood curiosity about numbers had evolved into mathematical frameworks that protected international security and opened new possibilities for human technological achievement. Diana's precision had become humanity's shield against threats that conventional approaches could never have addressed. Years later, as Diana looked up at the night sky from her Pentagon office, she reflected on a journey that had taken her from Arizona classrooms to the cutting edge of space-based military technology. Mathematics had been more than her passion. It had become her contribution to a safer world where intellectual precision could achieve what seemed impossible. The stars that had once seemed distant and unreachable now represented operational environments where her mathematical innovations continued to enhance human capabilities and security. Diana Rodriguez had proven that with enough precision, enough dedication, and enough mathematical brilliance, even the vast complexity of space itself could be calculated, predicted, and mastered. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.